Kip, what's up, man? So great to see you. As always, looking forward to our conversation on this Ask Me Anything today.
Before we hit record, you're saying that your moose is coming out. Are we going to see that in the background, or where are you going to put this behemoth?
If I put a moose in my background, all you would
like
see
it's
is
eating
brown
you.
fur.
Yeah,
Yeah. You, based on where I'm at here on this screen, you would see nothing. But I actually have a pitched roof in my living room, right above a stairwell that goes down to the basement. So I think it's going to fit right there. But it's 4 feet wide, it's 4 feet deep, and it's 4 feet tall. So this thing is massive. And if I put it on that peak above the stairwell, I don't think it won't take up any living space. It'll just engulf the room, which is going to be rad.
Maybe said another. It's not going to take anybody out. Like no one's going to get injured by the mounted moose. If it's
they might, depending on how I got to do a little research on how I'm going to mount this dang thing, because I don't know how heavy it is, but it is a monster. And I've always wanted a moose mount in my house. So I finally have one, and me and my son took care of business, and it was our own hunt. I didn't buy somebody else's mount. It's our moose. It's our hunt. So I feel good about it.
That's funny. Have you seen those almost like gag things where like a noisemaker and it's super small and it goes somewhere and everyone's like, what's that noise? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so. Yeah.
You should
put that
get
in
like
its mouth or something.
You should do like a moose one, and it's just randomly it like you hear like the moose every so often.
It would be funny if you did it like motion detected. So every time you walk by, it's like, I don't even know what it would make, but I'm gonna make that.
Me either.
Moose call. All right, cool. Motion. Look, I'm taking notes because I actually like that idea. All right.
This is the critical things that we resolve here on the Order of Man podcast.
This is important stuff right here. This is very important stuff. All right, cool. Man. Well, good to see you. Let's get into some questions today. Yeah, let's just get right to it. Sorry, I was taking notes and I got distracted with tales of my moose hunt. So
taking notes of the sound maker for the moose head.
If I don't take notes, I won't do it. I think that's a good lesson for everybody else. Like, do whatever works for you. Some people make fun of my systems, but my systems work. So it's only stupid if it doesn't work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know this is a system of yours. And a long time ago, I read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. All you young kids have no idea what that book is because I'm dating myself here, but he talks about the master task list is what he calls it. And he uses it like you use your notes. It's the dumping ground of, I need to do that. It has no priority. I don't know when, but I need to document that it needs to get done. It goes on the MTL. And then on a weekly basis, you scrub that, you look through it and go, am I calling anything up out of there? Right. And assign appropriately. It's perfect. And then you get out of your head and you're not like trying to memorize stuff and ultimately end up forgetting.
I mean, there's value in the task list itself because you know what needs to get done. But I think one of the often overlooked benefits of having the task list, which you just glossed over briefly, is that it's out of your head. And now it doesn't occupy space anymore, because that making this motion tripped, moose call thing, it's a good idea. I want to do it, but I don't need that in my head today. I got a bunch of other stuff I need to get done. So I like to purge it. You guys can see. So I use a battle planner. You Iron Council guys are going to be upset with me because I haven't, it's all blank now.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing that's filled out is right here where I have all of my tasks that need to be done for the week. So I've already written that out. In fact, I wrote that out the end of last week. So I can come in here, throw them on here. The rest of the stuff will be filled in this morning. It's been a little bit of a hectic morning. So yeah, anyways, if you can document
your battle. Stuff, good. I was just going to say, if you're going to document your battle planner. Let's just start.
Am I going to have to mute you? Am I going to have to mute you, Kip? Come on, we've been doing this for 3 years. We should know the dance. We should know the harmony at this point. Go ahead.
Yeah, totally.
Go ahead.
If you want a planner like Ryan's, go to store.orderofman.com. Back to you.
Yes. One other plug. So the battle planner store.orderman.com. One other plug is the Iron Council is going to be opening up here in about 3.5 weeks or so. This is going to be huge, guys. This is the last opening of the year. So we're going to build out this last quarter, because what I really want to do is I want to give you guys momentum as you move into 2024. Like, everybody starts talking about New Year's resolutions in December, maybe the end of November if they're a little bit more of an achiever, but that's too late. What I want to do is I want to give you some track to run on. It's like a plane that takes off. If you're at the end of the runway, like, you don't have enough space to take off. It's just not going to happen, right? Uh, if you have some runway, you can get some ground. You can get up to speed, and then by the time you hit halfway or three quarters or even the end of the runway, you have enough speed for the lift and everything you need to do to fly successfully. But that's what we don't do with our planning. If you get into December and you're like, 2024 is going to be the best year ever, it's like, nah, it's probably going to be the same as it was, give or take, from 2023. But if we plan it out now for the next 3 months and you start working towards achieving these things, what you're going to do is you're going to find that some of your planning isn't going to work effectively. Good. I want to know that now. Some of it's going to work really, really well. Good. I want to know what that is so I can double down on it. So that when we hit January of 2024, it's not like, what are we going to do? I'm going to start new habits this year. It's not this abrupt start stop type thing. We're going to ramp up right now. And I promise you that if you take the last 3 months of your life of this year seriously, then you can say 2024 is my year, because you're actually doing something about it right now. And that's all the work that we're doing inside the Iron Council. And you can look at that in two different ways. Number one is you can go to orderman.com/Iron Council. You can get signed up on the wait list. That's way number one. Number two is you can go to orderman.com/battle ready. And if you do that, then you're going to get a series of 17 emails that's going to get you onboarded and ramped up and up to speed, so that when you hit the Iron Council come September 15th, when it opens up, you're going to be light years ahead of everybody else who didn't do any of that stuff. And everything that we talk about in there, you're already going to be familiar with. So let's start planning today for what we want to do tomorrow, and tomorrow will go better. So again, orderman.com/battle ready and orderman.com/Iron Council. Those are the two ways I would suggest to you.
Excellent. All right, excellent. Well, talking about the Iron Council, we're going to field some questions from the Foundry, which is our system within the IC. Daryl Hahn, I'm sure it depends on the habit, but what is better to first build, a good habit or break bad ones?
I don't really know if one is better than the other necessarily. I think this is where we start to get into the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and you should do this, you shouldn't do that. I don't think we need to get into that. I actually think you can do both at the same time, and you probably ought to consider doing that. In fact, in his work, Atomic Habits by James Clear, which we're actually going through in the Iron Council right now, which is probably why Daryl asked this question, and Charles Duhigg's work in, I think it's just called The Habit, the book, The Habit. They talk about
the yellow one,
the yellow one with the wheel or whatever it is on there. I can't remember exactly.
With the red logo. Yeah.
Yep. That's all I remember too. In both of their work, they talk about this concept of something triggering the habit. So, for example, smoking, let's say I think all of us, including smokers, would agree that's a bad habit. There's probably,
unless you're from Europe.
Yeah, there's probably a few people out there like, oh, this is excellent, this is good for my health, and this is going to improve my life. Like, very few people think that.
Our European brothers did not get the memo, guys. It's not good for you. You should probably stop. I was so shocked when we were in France how many people still smoke. I'm like, really? I thought we stopped this, but whatever.
Scotland was the same way. When we were in Edinburgh, it was like everybody was smoking, and if you heard them, they're all European. I don't know what it is, but it's not good for you. We all know that, and I think even Europeans know that. But something's triggering that for you. There's some sort of cue or trigger. The two terms I've heard.
Yeah.
You know, it might be anxiety. It might be somebody else lights up and you're like, well, I'll have a smoke with this guy, right? It could be that after work, hey, when I'm off work, then I have a smoke, or when lunch, I have a smoke. There's something that's triggering that habit for you, and we need to identify what that is. So you can do that, and then what you should be doing is simultaneously be replacing that bad habit with something more effective. So, for example, if you realize that the cue is socially related, everybody's going on a lunch break, everybody's taking a break from work, I'm out at the bar having a drink, and that's what your trigger is, then you can simultaneously remove the bad habit and replace at the same time with something better. And that could be maybe it's having a sucker. I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas here. You know,
Yeah.
maybe it's
Yeah.
having
Or
a
going for a
drink,
walk.
going for
Yeah.
a walk. Like it could be anything. But if you can identify what the cue and trigger is, then you can replace the bad habit with a good one. Because I think there's a problem in just saying, hey, I'm going to stop. So when I stopped drinking, for example, I think I would have had a harder time if I didn't replace it with seltzer water and energy
Mm.
drinks. So it was energy drinks, and I'm like, well, these aren't good either. So, and I still have an energy drink daily usually,
Yeah.
but I started to drink a lot more seltzer water because that I had to replace it with something. Otherwise, that void was going to create issues for me. So I think you can do both
Yeah.
simultaneously, whether it's drinking, smoking, pornography, gambling, womanizing, lusting, like any of these things that we typically, you know, talk about, drug use. I think you should probably do both simultaneously. It could even be biting
Yeah.
your nails. You know, that's when I bite
Totally.
my nails. I've done a lot better lately, but it's usually when I'm focused on a task or I'm anxious about something that I bite my nails. And so it could just be, you know, flipping a pencil or I don't know, coming up with whatever you can to replace that bad habit with something
Yeah.
more productive or more effective.
And that's what's recommended in Atomic Habits, right? Is when you grab a bad habit to replace it with a good one, not to just like, oh, I'm going to just stop, right? I mean, that's kind of one of the foundations of that book. So it
Yeah.
kind of addresses Daryl's question, right? It is
Right.
you do both, right? You find the bad one, replace it with a good one. Yeah.
I also think there's a great tactic or strategy in there. And one thing that, again, both authors talk about is creating friction for the tasks or, excuse me, the habits that you don't want to engage in.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to drink, for example, first thing is get rid of all the booze in the house. Like that's pretty common knowledge at this point. But the reason that
Yeah.
works is because now, in order for you to have a drink, you can't just do it on a whim because you can't go into the kitchen or the cabinet and get yourself a bottle of booze. You actually have to
Yeah.
get in the car. You got to drive somewhere. You got to spend money on something. Now, that might not hold you back completely, but there's barriers there that create friction between you and the habit that you want to get rid of. And then we want to make the good habits, working out, dieting, eating right, eating correctly. We want to make that more streamlined. So a great example of that would be food prep. If you have a rough time with eating food throughout the week and you're busy and you're like, shit, I don't have time. Like, let me just run to Burger King real quick. Well,
Yeah.
if on Sunday night you do food prep, now it's actually quicker for you just to pull that out of the fridge, microwave it, and then just eat it. So the idea of you having not enough time is no longer an issue. And you just grease the grooves for the healthy habit and made the harder habit, gave it more friction. That's helpful too. That's been something extremely, extremely useful for me.
Yeah, totally. What's your thoughts around building mental fortitude? You know, it's like sometimes I look at habits or I like I've had this conversation with gentlemen before. It's like, oh, I struggle in these areas. And then you're like, well, what are you doing to build some mental fortitude? Like, are you even is there other areas that you're practicing delayed gratification, like working out and doing hard things? And it's like, there's nothing difficult in their lives, right? Everything is instant gratification. And so part of me feels like, well, and you want to tackle this difficult thing, but yet you're not getting the reps of doing hard things mentally at all.
Well, there's a couple of points I would make with that. One is that I've seen guys, and I'm going to give you a silly example to prove a point, but I've seen guys scoff at the idea of having systems in place because they believe you should just be strong enough to overcome whatever your
Just
temptation is.
discipline always.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's dumb. I mean, there's no way around it. That's dumb. The
Yeah.
idea of
Why
that, like,
make it more? Yeah.
I mean, let's take pornography use, for example. So it's like, okay, I want to refrain from pornography. So why in the world would you sit in front of your computer and like potentially expose yourself to that and just exercise willpower and say, I'm not going to look at the pornographic websites I'm used to looking at?
Yeah.
That's
Totally.
dumb.
Yeah. So
You're just playing with fire at
you're
that point.
asking for fire. Yeah. Yeah. You're asking for trouble when you're putting yourself in bad circumstances. Yeah.
But some guys will say, well, I do that because then I'll be able to resist it in the future. It's like, yeah, maybe, maybe, but also
Yeah.
it's just a dumb thing to do. What I would suggest is, to your point, is learn to build up some mental fortitude in some other areas, like working out, like training jujitsu, like getting up earlier than you're supposed to. Maybe it's taking cold showers. Maybe it's taking on a new project of work. Maybe it's doing a new hobby or engaging a new project. One project I did this weekend, two actually, that I've never done before, is I hung and installed some cabinets. Turned out pretty good. And I'm building a custom closet. Never done that stuff before. I have enough woodworking skills that I can, figure it out.
Yeah.
But that's fun. It's challenging. It's rewarding. It occupies my time. It's something that's productive. So I would definitely suggest you build up mental fortitude that way. One way I did it in jujitsu all the time is that if somebody ended up getting me in a submission, as long as they weren't like jerking on my arm or, being not a good training partner, I would sit in the submission a little longer than I felt comfortable with. So, Kip, if you had
Yeah.
your arms wrapped around my neck, when I first started training, it was like, okay, you got me.
Yeah. It's instant. Like
It's
it was
instant.
more, it was a tap to the panic, not a tap
Yes.
to the actual choke.
And now
Yeah.
it's like, okay, this hurts. I know he's got me. Like, I'm not getting out of this. This is a submission. He's got me dead to rights. Just sit here for a second and feel it. Like, just feel it.
Yeah.
And you feel it and you're like, okay, yep, that's the point. And then you notice yourself starting to build up some calmness in the face of chaos. But there's one other point to this. You have to be deliberate and intentional about it. And so this is why our concept of after action reviews is so important, because now we start connecting the dots. If I go train jujitsu and I train for an hour and then I come home and I don't think anything about it, sure, it was good for my body. It was like, sure,
Yep.
mentally, it wasn't as effective and productive as it could be, unless I say, oh, that one thing he did, how does that translate to my life? How does
Yeah.
it
Totally.
translate to everyday life for me to be calm? How does it translate for me to show aggression at certain moments, but refrain and restrain in others? And that's why the after action review is so important, because we take these real world examples and situations that we're in, and then we apply the lessons broadly across the rest of our lives. If you're not doing an after action review, you're missing valuable feedback that's going to translate from one experience to another.
Totally. Love it, man. Josh Fryer, emergency preparedness versus extreme prepping. Where do you draw the line between these two categories?
This is easy. I thought a lot about this one, because there's preparation, there's paranoia, right?
Yeah.
The line is this: when it starts to hinder your other performance and your other duties, responsibilities, and obligations. That's the line. So if you're, let's take food storage as just a small example. I think all of us would agree that having some food set aside for an emergency, having a way to filter water, even having water storage, I think we would all agree that that's an important thing. But if you're $50,000 in consumer debt, or more, probably more, I don't even know what the average is, $50,000 in consumer debt, you're losing $500 to $1,000 a month in your discrepancy between what you spend and what you make. And you can't do a basic budget. What are you're going to go spend $500 a week on like food? I mean, come on, how sustainable is that? Now it's starting to hinder other facets of your life. Could you spend $20 a week? Maybe do that. And that's the point, is that do it to the degree that you can, as long as it doesn't negatively impact the rest of your life. With the financial situation I'm in, I'm fortunate enough that I can go out and I can do food prep, and I can and I have, and get everything that I need. And it's not going to hurt me or hinder me in the financial realm. But if it was, then I have to consider how I'm going to invest in food prep without negatively impacting this side of things over here. Another one, this is very common for a lot of guys, especially as we get into the fall and we're getting into hunting season. I'm all for taking care of yourself. I'm all for having time with yourself. I'm all for spending time with buddies. I think that's crucial. I think it's important. I think hunting is a great way to develop a skill set that might come in handy at some point down the road. But there's a point in time where it's going to negatively impact your marriage or the relationship you have with your kids. If your son's a senior and this is his last year of playing football and you're going to miss every one of his games because every weekend he has a game, you're out on a hunt, that's a problem. Right now, it's become an issue because you're impacting negatively other things that you've identified as being important to you. Do you miss one game or two? Sure, I get it. I can see that. But to miss all of them because you're taking care of this one thing, that's where it starts to go from being prepared to being paranoia or being extreme in your activities.
I actually have a good example of this from a mindset perspective, and you'll kind of relate to this. Not maybe relate, but you'll be able to understand this due to Utah culture a little bit. So when I was a kid, my mom was all about the world ending. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would have family night, and the books that we were reading weren't like be happy and live a fulfilled life. It was like the moon's going to turn to blood. We're all dying. Right. Like it was like super focused around second coming kind of, orientation. And as a kid, I completely got into the mindset of I'm never going to get past high school. I'm never going to get married and have kids. And it affected my mindset. Like I was so wrapped up in a doomsday approach to things that I wasn't enjoying life because I was so prepared, so worried about what tomorrow was going to bring. This is a good example of prepping, right? Prepping is for what? Prepping for what? The future. Just make sure that your preparedness doesn't stop you from living in the present and enjoying what we have. So there's just another example of how that can get out of whack.
Yeah, great example. Great example. Also wondering who you're preparing for. I had a close friend. This was probably 15 years ago now. We were both in the financial services industry, and he started to get into prepping, and then it became more and more, and he was building like underground bunkers, like digging out holes with excavators and putting Connex, like he was getting into it. Well, over the long haul, he ended up neglecting his other duties and responsibilities. He neglected work, he's neglected his finances, and he neglected his family. So he lost his job, he became financially destitute, and he lost his family. I'd rather die.
Totally.
Like, so, okay, great. You're prepared. And then now you're going to live in this bunker by yourself. I'd rather die than not have financial abundance, all my relationships, working with my kids, having a job that gives me fulfillment. I would rather be dead than all that gone, but me have all the food storage in the world or the fanciest, box underground. So,
totally. All right, Drew Sands. In business, how do you decide which revenue stream to go all in on? I know for you, it's the Iron Council. However, I know that events and merchandise are also part of the business.
This is a good question. Right out of the gate, I would say the one that is going to be the most lucrative. I'm just thinking through this. I haven't seen this question, so I'm just thinking through this. I would look at what is most lucrative, what is most cost effective. So for example, if I could spend $1 in marketing and earn 10, I would do that over spending $1 and earning 2. I'm going to go all in on the 10x return rather than, the 1 or 2x return. Also, I think a consideration is, what do you enjoy? Like I think, look at the margins from purely a mathematical perspective, but also if you don't enjoy doing that, how sustainable is that going to be? Unless you're part of another business where you're worried about revenues and bottom line and all that kind of stuff. And that's something different than what I'm talking about now. I'm talking about for my business. The Iron Council is a lucrative element of our business. If I didn't enjoy that, I don't care how lucrative it was. It's just not going to be something I'm really going to get too much into. But I also realize that there's risk in going all in on one thing. And so we diversify even in our business. So we diversify with merchandise. If I'm telling you, hey, join the Iron Council for $97 a month, that's in somebody's wheelhouse and it's not in other people's, but they can sure as heck afford a $25 hat. Or maybe they don't want to do the $97 a month, but they'd love to spend $2,000 and come to an event with their son. So these are different price points and different pricing models for different purposes. We have other plans in place that are going to be one-off products that might be around $50 to $150. This is not a recurring sort of business model. It's just a one-time $50 to $150 purchase. And that's going to hit guys that have a little money in the bank account that want to spend, $100 on a course, for example. Another thing that we started to implement with our good friend Lex in the Iron Council is some more small group coaching. Well, that's going to be significantly more expensive than what the Iron Council is, but some guys are there. They have the budget, they have the means, they have the desire. And so what I try to do is create all sorts of different price points and different pricing models and structures based on trying to capture, this is like a business stuff. So don't, like, it sounds weird when we're talking about the order of man, because I really look at it as a mission. So let's just hang that on the wall for a minute. I'm talking about the business element of it now. Is I'm trying to capture as many different people as I can in different price points, in different economic statuses. And we do that by creating different types of products and different ways to pay for them.
Yeah. Well, another way to saying that is provide services for those individuals based upon where they are, right? Like some people say, hey, based upon where I am, I want hands-on, best of the best coaching or direct, influence, and I don't want to share, right? Or other people are like, hey, based on where I'm at, my price point is, battle ready and, maybe some events once a year, right? Like it is about serving people where they are. And there's a couple things, Drew, I'd consider too. It's like, which things are passive, right? And other things to consider is like which ones generate reoccurring revenue stream, right? In the space that I am in, a lot of stuff is project-based work that fluctuates. It's high, it's hot, it's cold, it's warm. It might be all over the place. And so for us as an organization to focus on, hey, how do we generate reoccurring revenue that's dependable? That's big, right? Or even passive revenue where, back to your point, Ryan, maybe the margins are minimal and it's reoccurring. Or if I'm not interested in that aspect of the business, my passion's not there. Okay, well, how can I delegate that to other team members? Let them run with that side of it. And then we have some passive income that I can almost be like out of sight, out of mind, and focus my energy where my talents are or where my interests are. So I totally agree with you, Ryan. Like it's not, and I'd be careful with this. And you said it, Drew, so I'm putting it back on you. Go all in on. I would be careful with all in on. There's a lot of different ways that you can generate revenue stream. And the last thing you want is to go all in on something that, based upon a change in the market, you're dead in the water. Right. Yeah. So you want to look for things that allow you to be recession proof, as well as just market proof, depending on how things evolve and change.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it. I mean, even with our business model, it's the reoccurring revenue, right, with the Iron Council, and that's created a base layer of business revenue. And then now we can do other things, right? I can come up with hats and shirts and do events and create courses and all of that stuff. Again, we're just looking at it now, guys. So please understand me from a business perspective. So this has nothing to do with how much I value the movement. I always have to throw that out there because people are like, well, isn't this important to you? It's just about money.
It's just a business to you,
no, is it? It's both. It's a business so I can stay in the game and serve, but it's also something I'm deeply passionate about. But there's going to be a couple of guys out there who inevitably say it because they can't wrap their heads around the idea of enjoying something, but also making a lot of money doing it because they're not doing that in their life. They're miserable. So they equate earning money with misery. And if that's what you think about earning money, do you really think you're going to create financial abundance in your life? You're not. You're really not.
Yeah. And even if you maybe pull it off, you're miserable while you're doing it. Like, really? Yeah. Then what was the whole point?
Right.
Sorry. Injection.
Yeah, no, you're right. So now we can experiment with different things. And I think about a hat, for example. There's some guys who are like, I don't want all the coaching. I don't want the brotherhood. I don't want all that. But like, Ryan, I really enjoy your podcast. How can I support? I need to have a way for you to support at $20 a pop because that's all you're willing to. And that's fine. I love it. I'll take it. And hopefully you get a great hat or a great shirt and has a great message and it reminds you to try to aspire to live a certain way. And in the meantime, it generates revenue for the business so that I can continue to invest in technology and camera equipment and new marketing strategies and hiring the right people. That's one thing I get a lot is like guys will say, especially with the Iron Council. I made a post about 3 months ago when we opened last time, and I said, "Hey, the Iron Council's open, and here's what you get, and here's what you do." And somebody wrote back, "Well, where does all that money go?" And it wasn't like a genuine question. It's just a dumb question. And let me tell you why it's a dumb question. Number one, it's cynical. And that's how he meant it. Is like, where's all my money going? Yeah. So it's a cynical question, but it's also really dumb. Because, for example, if I go to Walmart today and I get some groceries or I buy a new computer, like I don't ask where does all my money? I'm going to buy this new Mac. Where does all that money go? Where the hell do you think it goes? It's a business. So it goes into employees, it goes into technology, it goes into the actual thing that you bought, it goes into extra money to generate revenue. Some of that gets siphoned off to personal accounts so that people can put food on the table and a roof over their head. Like it's a ludicrous question because you spend money every single day and never once do you ask, where does all this money go? We know where it goes. And capitalism is the greatest system that we've ever devised to create more prosperity, more abundance, more technology, more advancement in medical and transportation and standard of living devices, all because we're a little bit greedy. And the more money we can generate, the more we can pour back into businesses and R&D and development and marketing and put a great product out into the world. Guys, and this is not just my business. I see it all the time. Get over it. Yeah, does it have its faults? Sure. And I'll tell you where, now I'm going to get on my soapbox. I'll tell you where it has its faults. When the government gets involved, that's cronyism. Like that's not capitalism. That's crony capitalism. Okay, that's governments getting involved, lobbyists getting involved to manipulate artificially markets in order to prop certain businesses or industries up. We even see it with subsidies to prop industries up, to put others completely out of business. It's all through the lobbyists. It's all through governments. Man, you get that stuff out of capitalism, out of the free market society, and just watch people thrive through innovation. Now, there's going to be some companies that fail. I don't need the government to come in and rescue those companies. Those companies need to either get smart or develop a new product that people actually want to pay money for, or figure out a way to reduce their price. Like, I don't need anybody else to come save this company. Sometimes the hostage has to be shot. And so sometimes businesses are going to go under. But the businesses that don't learn from those because they see it and they're like, oh, we need to do better than that competitor because he went out of business. This is the way to true prosperity and abundance, not only in America, but in the world. But we got to get over this idea of somebody making money as inherently evil or bad or manipulative. It's only that way when the government gets involved. And all that other stuff will be regulated through free markets. Give you a great example of that. Take Bud Light. I don't even care if you agree with this or not. It's not the point. But the market has spoken. Bud Light effed up. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it. You can agree, you can disagree. But the reality is that 8+ billion people on the planet said, Bud Light, you effed up. And it was all because of that Dylan Mulvaney fiasco. Again, I don't care whether you agree with the politics or not. But isn't that a beautiful thing? Because now 8 billion people can say, no, we're not playing that game. So Bud Light has two options. They can double down on their efforts and continue to screw it up, which they have to some degree, or they can get smart and say, oh, you know what? Our customer base doesn't like this. Let's think about a better way of serving our clientele. This is a beautiful system. It's the government that gets in and mucks it all up. But anyways, that's my soapbox for the day.
You don't seem to, I was going to say, I don't think you have a strong opinion about this subject. No, it's all good. All right. We're going to hop over to Facebook. To join us there, facebook.com/group/orderman. Brendan Sweridowski. In a healthy household, is there an age and time limit on when to move out from a parent's perspective and the child's? If the kids is taking advantage, still paying rent, of a cheaper, healthy situation at home? Is it wrong for them to live there into their late 20s? If my child and I have a healthy relationship and they are doing what they need to progress in life, when would do you think they should be out by?
You're looking at health from one side of the equation.
Yeah.
Health,
Yep.
or at least in the short term. You say you have a healthy relationship. Do you? Or is it just convenient for your kid? And so he's like, I better be nice to dad. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, they've learned at least not to bite the hand that's feeding them. Yeah.
And also, let me ask you this, talking about health, because you said that a couple of times. Is it healthy long term for a child who's either in college or out starting his career? Is it healthy for him not to launch and not to pay his own way and not to stumble and not to fumble and not to screw up? Is that healthy? A parent who's overly cautious would say, well, yeah, because then, he's taken care of and he doesn't have to worry about that. He can focus on. Get real and also get over yourself. You're not even worried about your kid at that point. You're worried about your own feelings.
Yeah.
You're more worried about how you'll feel about what this child is going to experience when they deal with hardship than you are with exposing them to some tough circumstances and letting them figure it out. I mean, how many of us, as we've grown up, I'm 42 years old, I've missed rent. Okay. I've gone months without paying rent in my life. Like there's been times where I'm like, shit, I got to rob Peter to pay Paul. Like, and you know what? I'm okay. Like I figured it out. There was some sleepless nights and there was some difficult conversations and there were some pissed off landlords, but you know what? Here I am. It's fine. But let your kids have that and get out of the way so they can go out and actually create experiences that are going to be some are painful where they can learn how to be out on their own.
Yeah. I was going to say something, Ryan. I feel like some of this is rooted in the idea that we don't think the best teacher is the difficulty. and then we delay it, right? And so think about your example of like, not being able to pay rent. It is better that your kids figure that out at 18 and 19 than 26. Then 28, then 30 or whatever. And so the longer we delay the difficulties that provide opportunities for growth, the bigger the impact will be when they have to learn that lesson. Right. And that's one of the things that we fail to do here is we think, well, in an ideal state, right? It's in an ideal state, this is what's better for them and it helps them out. But what we're failing to realize is most learning is found in the difficulty. Most learning is found in the struggle. And if we delay the struggle, then we delay the learning and the consequences of that delayed learning just increases as they get older and older. Yeah. So you want Tommy to fail young, not when he's older. And if we keep swooping in and helping them, we're delaying that learning experience when the impact is minimal.
You even want them to fail when they're under your wing. Like my kids, totally, they have chores. And so I tell them, here's your chores. And a couple of them will put up a stink because they haven't been around me long enough, but they'll put up a stink about it. It's like, I don't want to do that. It's like, cool. Then you don't get to eat dinner with us tonight. And they're like, well, that's not fair. No, that's 100% fair. Like I have to pay for that food. I have to cook the food. I have to prepare it and I have to do the dishes. The least you can do is the dishes after it's done. You don't like doing that? Don't eat dinner with us. Like that's the deal. Oh, you don't like, you have to vacuum your room? Cool. I'll take that mattress back. Like that's the deal. Like it's not a hard thing. And they'll put up a stink about it and they'll go to bed hungry for a couple of nights. And then they'll realize, oh, yeah, I actually have to pull my weight to eat. Yep. That's what you have to do here.
Yeah. Because that's what the world is. And the sooner they learn that lesson, the better. Yeah,
right.
I totally agree.
What was the first part of his question? He said something about like his son is taking advantage of ...
Yeah. I mean, if the kid is taking advantage, still paying rent of a cheaper, healthy situation at home, is it wrong for them to live there until their late 20s?
You're conflating
he's just trying
terms.
to like,
You're saying a cheaper healthy. So what you're doing, you're saying that being cheaper is healthier. Like you're conflating it. He's taking advantage of this, right? That's the answer. He's taking advantage of the system.
Of course he is. Yeah.
Which you can't blame
That's
him
what that
for, but
is. Yeah.
create the opportunity for him not to take advantage of it. Don't say that because you guys talk or because it's cheap, it's healthy. That's not what healthy means.
Yeah.
Healthy means he's learning to be self-sufficient. So give him the leeway to be self-sufficient. The biggest thing we have to realize, guys, is you're not doing this for Tommy. I know you're not, because that's not what I'm doing for my kids when I coddle them. You know who I'm doing it for? Me. Because I don't want to deal with the fallout. I don't want to see my kids suffer. I don't want to feel sorry for what my child is going through. That's nothing to do with what they're going through. It revolves around me. It's selfish. And we got to let go of that selfishness and let life happen and progress and let them learn. All right. I think we beat that one to death.
Yeah. Christopher Hickman. I just finished my Mike Glover's book, Prepared. Reading it gave me a lot of good insights on how to better protect myself. There's a lot to consider, and it's easy to go overboard wanting to buy it all right away. What sort of precautions have you taken to keep your vehicle equipped for emergencies? And what were your first priorities you tackled in terms of preparedness when you got to your new place in Utah?
I think Mike would agree with this. You have to almost in a way triage the situations that you might encounter. So when I moved from Maine to Utah, the likelihood of me needing a bunch of cold weather survival gear in my truck drastically reduced, because I'm here in Southern Utah. It's going to be 95 degrees today. It's not to say I shouldn't be aware of it, but it's not as important as making sure that I have ways to keep myself cool and hydrated, which may not be the same issue that I'm dealing with in Maine. So what we do is we triage what we're likely to encounter. So as far as what I have in the vehicle, it's it's a bag that I would have in place if I needed to deal with something overnight. It's some water. It's medical supplies, because the likelihood of me either having some sort of medical injury or coming across somebody. I mean, how often, guys, have you been the first person to witness an accident? And now you got to go take care of this person. Maybe that's something as severe as a tourniquet, right? Or maybe it's just, bandaging some deep lacerations. That's good. That's a strong likelihood that that's going to happen to you if it already hasn't at some point in your life. So that should be in there. You got to consider, man, what would happen to my vehicle if it broke down? So do you have a working jack? Do you have your spare tire? Is it inflated? What does that look like? Another thing that I have is I have a little USB charger that will jumpstart my car. So if for whatever reason my battery died or I left the light on or whatever, I can take that little USB charged charger, hook it right up to the battery terminals. And I know it works because I've tried it. Fires right up as long as I keep that thing charged. It's probably a good reminder. I probably should go in and charge it now because it's probably dead.
Check that. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's things like this that you got to consider. If my vehicle breaks down, if I come across for myself or somebody else a medical condition, also self-defense, especially if you're in a city. And I'm going to put this disclaimer out there, check your local laws, but there might be a situation where you have to defend yourself. If you're in a riot or somebody's trying to mug you or steal your vehicle, or you deal with some sort of violent encounter, how do you deal with that? Also, do you know the laws? Like if there's a riot and they start jumping on your car, can you mow people down to get out of there? Like, is that a legal viable strategy? Yes or no? What ramifications come with that? Like, these are all important things to know outside of just what kind of preparations you should have for your vehicle. These are some considerations that I've implemented in my vehicles. Oh, the other thing,
covered it, man.
The other thing I would say is I actually think it's really important that everybody have a carbureted vehicle. Like every vehicle that we have just about now has computer technology, and I'm trying not to dip into the realm of conspiracy or paranoia, but like that stuff can be shut off from a remote. That stuff's subject to EMPs, electromagnetic pulses. That stuff's subject to just extra parts breaking down. Forget about the conspiracy stuff. So even I like having a carbureted vehicle.
Yeah.
Learn how to
Yeah.
drive stick. If I was driving, if I was deserted somewhere and I needed to get from point A to point B, or there was some sort of emergency situation, the only vehicle was a manual transmission. Could I operate the thing? If not, I better figure out how to operate manual transmission. Otherwise, somebody might not get to the hospital in time because that's the only vehicle there and available.
Yeah. All right. Josh Sutton, as a father that was an Eagle Scout, don't associate with the Boy Scouts of America anymore, would Trail Life be a decent replacement for my son? And is
I
Trail
don't.
Life like a organization? Is that what that is? Or
Yeah, Trail Life USA, I think
okay,
is what it's called. Yeah, I agree
okay,
with the Boy Scout thing. A lot of people, when I talk about Boy Scouts, I called this and people mocked me. I said Boy Scouts is dead. This was probably 5 years ago.
yeah,
Boy Scouts is done. It's dead. People are like, no, this is. They mocked me. I'm like, fine, whatever. But this is a dying organization. When you go against your charter, you go against your determining and founding principles, it's only a matter of time before you go under. And people will say, well, my local chapter. Well, that's great. But the rotten tree cannot yield and bear good fruit. If the tree has gone bad, the fruit will inevitably go bad. It might take some time, but it too will inevitably go bad. If you don't have any support at the higher echelons of the organization, like at some point you can only rely on your own abilities. And there are some great scout leaders who probably listen to this podcast who I commend. I think you're doing honorable and great work. So don't misunderstand me. But you're working for a corrupt organization. You're working for an organization, maybe not corrupt, but you're working for an organization that has gone bad. The tree has gone bad. And now you're just hoping that the nutrients that are remaining are going to be enough to help you do what you want to do. It's just not a great system to operate in. So, yeah, Trail Life USA is one I've looked into. That's a really good, viable option based on the research that I've done. If I understand correctly, that one might, there's a couple others I can't remember right offhand, but that one might have more of a Christian undertone to it, which I don't think is inherently bad. It's just something you need to know. In fact, I think it's inherently good, but it's just something you need to be aware of. Um, so yeah, or create your own. I mean, create your own system if it's just you and your kid. I would actually love
yeah,
to see that. I'd love to see more one-to-one involvement or 1-to-2 involvement, meaning you and your son or sons and maybe a friend, right?
yeah.
Maybe the kid down the
Well,
road who doesn't have dad around and he can come over and hang out with you and your boy while you go fishing this weekend. That's what I'm talking about.
yeah. I mean, just imagine the benefit of, oh, there's no Boy Scouts in my neighborhood, so I'm going to have to learn these things so I can teach my kids. Like seriously, is it's not going to be a bad thing. I mean, we're all better off in that example. So,
Well, take your
yeah,
immediate neighborhood. I've got one house up here to the street. I've got a field there. And then if you go down here, I probably got, 4 or 5 houses on this side, 4 or 5 on this side. And then this cul-de-sac right around the corner has probably got 10 houses. So there's probably 20 within 200 to 300 yards of my house. There's probably 20 houses. So out of those 20, half of them probably have, maybe actually in this neighborhood, probably 80% of them have kids in the house. Okay. So there's 80% of those houses. So 16 of those houses have kids. Of those, let's say that, I don't know, 60, 70, 80%, I think it's a little higher in the area that we're in, have fathers in the home. So that means that there's probably, of the 16 that have kids, there's probably 12 to 13 to 14 that have dads in the house itself. What about the other 4 households? And what if the 12, let's say 12, what about the 12 households that had engaged fathers decided, hey, you know what? We're going to serve our kids, but we're also going to make sure we're going to take care of ours in this neighborhood. And now all of a sudden, you've got 12 dads for 4 households that don't have dads in it. That means that there's like 3 dads for every house that doesn't have a dad in it. Like, imagine if we all just did that for a second. So instead of just going to the game, go to your neighbor and say, hey, I know John is, I don't know if he's around or what, but we're going to the football game and you want to come with us? Or, hey, we're going camping this week. Like, we'd love to have little Billy come with us if he's interested. Like, imagine now he's got 3 dads. He might even be better off than having a disengaged father in the house. because there's 3 to 4 per house that are engaged that way. That's the kind of neighborhoods that we need to create. And then you know what? Boy Scouts isn't an issue. This is not.
Yeah. I like it. Bob Ross. Yes, Bob Rossi says, happy little trees. My wife recently lost a lot of blood and underwent emergency surgery. She is stable now and home, but will be off work for 2 months. Financially, we are stable, and this is not a source of stress. What I am concerned about is with taking care of my son and wife. I know I can take care of them, but I am concerned I may not have any time left for me. What small things would you recommend or tricks you may possibly use to get small amounts of time for self-care? Thanks for your ideas and input.
Yeah, you might not have time for yourself. Like, I think that realization is important, but you just said yourself, she's laid up for 2 months. You can do that. Anybody can do that for 2 months. Like, if you can't have it, if you have to stop going to the gym or you don't have as much training time, then that sucks, but you can do it because you're a loving husband and father. And that's the sacrifice that we would make. But there are things that you can do. Let's take the gym, for example. Maybe you can't go to the gym, but you can go for a run around the neighborhood. What's that going to take you? 20 minutes? Depending on how fast or how far you run, it might take you 20 minutes. You can't go outside and do a body weight workout. You can get your son. How old is Bob's son? Did he say?
He didn't say, but I mean, whether he's in a stroller or walking with you or on his little bike, right? Like that walk, that exercise, that's a great time with him.
Yeah. So you kill 2 birds with 1 stone that way. But there's other things. I think your wife, she's not incapacitated. I mean, she's present, she's there. And so you might say to her, hey, hon, just so you know, like, I'm going to take about half an hour off. And I'm going to go for a bike ride, or I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to go for a ride, or I'm going to go grab a drink with my buddy, or we're going to go to the football game tonight or whatever. With our son, he's occupied with coloring right now. I told him that if he can stay here and he can color and he can play with Lego or do whatever he's going to do, then we'll invite one of his friends over when I get back in 45 minutes. But just wanted to let you know, he should be occupied. He should be good. And he knows how you're feeling. And so I set those boundaries up. And that's the deal. I think depending on how old he is, if it's a baby, that's harder, right? But you can plan that in a nap. So you're like, hey, hon, little Billy's taking a nap right now. He's going to be out for the next hour and a half, 2 hours. Are you good? Can I get you some lunch? Can I get you taken care of? Because while he's taking a nap, I'm going to let you do whatever you need to do. I'm out. Like, I'm going to go have lunch with my buddies. And so you just plan around that to make it work for everybody during this time.
Totally. Well, and there's like, I don't know, like a thing I feel like I use all the time is like build up the excitement of movie night. And that's a great time to bail out, right? So you could say, hey, it's mom and son date night. I'm going to set up a movie, do some popcorn for you guys. You get to hang out. I'm going to remove myself, from the movie, and I'm going to go work out, right? Like there's some ways if you just get creative and think through them and over communicate, right? Like you may not be able to determine the nap thing. All right. Hey, honey, once baby falls asleep, just so you know, like I really want to go to the gym, so I'm going to bell once he's asleep. So that way you're managing some expectations. And the best way we do that is over communication. So
yeah. And along those lines of communication is making sure that you're being honest. So I was going to call you out on the movie night thing a minute ago, but I think the way you said it is exactly right. I thought you were going to go with, hey, while they're watching a movie, sneak out. And we're not doing, that's not what we're saying.
Yeah.
It's a plan. Totally. So here's what a lot of guys would do is like, and I've been guilty of it. You turn the movie on and it's like, what are my kids wanted to watch the other day, my 2 youngest, teenage something Kraken or something, like some car. I'm like, I don't want to watch this. And so what do? We bail. Like we go work, or we go fiddle around with a project, or we go tinker around. I don't know, whatever we do, right?
Yeah.
That's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is say, hey, hun, movie night for you two, not family movie night, because then you're lying. It's a movie night for you two. I need some time. This is going to allow you to have some time with our kid in an easier way for you to manage based on what's going on health-wise right now. But I'm not going to be here. And so you're over communicating, to your point, Kip, and you're also being honest. Because if you say family movie night and you start cooking popcorn and you sit down, you're in it. You just committed.
Yeah.
You can't bail now. I've bailed and it's not good. It doesn't, even if your kids don't say anything or your wife doesn't say anything, it's not a good look.
Yeah. Well, it's dishonest, right? I mean, you
That's
set
what
one
it is.
expectation and bailed out on it, right? It's a form of out of integrity. So cool.
Yeah.
All right, man. We got through our questions. So
Got 'em all?
a couple things as reminders. Yep. Ryan called these out earlier. So engage, learn about the Iron Council, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council to sign up and get notified when we open up roughly in 3 weeks, or get on that path now by going to orderofman.com/battle ready and start working and preparing to get that battle plan in place for when you can join. And of course, you can get your latest swag from store.orderofman.com and connect with Mr. Mickler on Instagram and Twitter at Ryan Mickler.
Sweet. I think we got it all. Kip, I appreciate you, man. Okay. Great conversation. Guys, great questions today. Some new ones we hadn't heard of that I kind of stumbled over for a minute, but we like those kind of questions. So keep them coming. All right, guys, let's get out there, take action, and become the men we are meant to be.